to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and your Philadelphia Union 3-game winning streak defeat CF Montréal by a score of 2-1 with goals from Indiana Vasilev and Mikael Uhre scoring the game-winning goal in the 84th minute. And look, we talked about this a few weeks ago, that the Union are taking care of business. They're beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, and the Union find themselves in second place in the Eastern Conference, 2 points behind Columbus Crew, which that is the Union's next opponent in MLS next Saturday from Subaru Park. The Union will welcome Daniel Gazdag back to Subaru Park since he last played there a few weeks ago, since his trade from Philadelphia to Columbus Crew. But we also know the Philadelphia Union this Wednesday have the first home U.S. Open Cup game against Indy 11 this Wednesday, 7:30, round of 32. And so, we'll talk about that game, I'm sure, on Thursday or Friday, and hopefully the Union win the U.S. Open Cup match and progress to the next round, because the Union are 4 or 5 games away from potentially lifting a trophy in the U.S. Open Cup. So that competition is important for the Union, especially if they want to be in CCC play next season. But we're not here to talk about the U.S. Open Cup. We're not here to talk about the game against Columbus Crew next week. We are here to talk about last night's victory over CF Montréal. And I guess before we go ahead and talk about that, we have a lot of clips to play from last night's game. Bradley Carnell talking about Mikael Uhre's record against CF Montréal. The strikers the last 3 weeks coming off the bench and scoring. Just how big of a win that was last night against a pretty difficult CF Montreal team. And we'll go ahead and talk about Blunder of the Week. I know we haven't had a Blunder of the Week the last couple of weeks, but you guys are going to enjoy this. I completely missed this when it was announced last night on social media, and so I'm glad that I saw some people that cover Colorado Rapids had posted about this. So it gives you a little spoiler into what Blunder of the Week is going to be. But without further ado, let's get straight into the news. All right, so the news really isn't that much to talk about, because all that I want to get you guys caught up with is, and I don't even have it segued here on the screen, that was because of their performance against DC United last week. Jakob Glesnes and Andre Blake have both been named to MLS's Team of the Matchday 10 for the Union's 3-0 defeat of DC United. Jakob Glesnes scored his first goal of the season last week, while Andre Blake made 5 saves and kept his 4th clean sheet of the season. We talked about that game last week with Jose Nunez, so no need to go ahead and rehash that. But it is interesting to note that through 10 games, and we'll see, will the Union have a player or two on Team of the Match Day for their performance against CF Montreal? Maybe Indiana Vasilev, maybe Mikael Uhre, maybe one of those guys have a shot. Maybe they both get one. But with Glesnes and Blake, those two guys became the 6th and 7th different player to be named into the Team of the Match Day this season for the Union. And that's a pretty big deal, right? And you look at how the Union season's going. I said it in the intro, second place in the Eastern Conference, only 2 points behind 2 points behind Columbus Crew. And I think after 11 games, who would have thought that the Union would be in second place, 2 points off of first place? And I'm not sure a lot of people would have seen this coming, but credit to Bradley Carnell, his coaching staff, for the players for adapting to the way that the Union want to play under Carnell. And has it been the prettiest of soccer? Absolutely not. Has it been entertaining soccer all the time? No. I don't think last game was that entertaining. But look, the Union find a way to get results, and that's exactly what they did last night against Montreal. Going to go ahead and pull up some of your comments here. Valerie says, I think actually before the show started, just plain sad watching last year's MLS Cup winner losing again, this time to Sporting Kansas City. And it's a game in which Sporting Kansas City hasn't even had one shot on goal. They won because of an LA own goal. Yeah, and it's crazy, right? That LA Galaxy and Montreal are 11 games into the season, still haven't got a single win. And yeah, it's not as bad as I guess some Union fans made it out to be, that how the Union were going to be this season, where they could have been in Montreal, they could have been in LA Galaxy. Valerie also says, and it's going to get worse, just in time for the Union to play LA next week. Both Peck and Penstel got injured tonight. Well, their loss is the Union's game in 2 weeks. LA Galaxy, I believe, come to Chester on a Wednesday. Kyle says, hi, Todd and Charmander. Hey, Kyle, thanks for tuning in. And Valerie also says, MLS record set tonight in Kansas. The only game ever won by a team without taking a shot on goal. Yeah, that's a fantastic stat right there. But again, we'll get to some stats tonight. The Union, very, very impressive. 11 games in this season. But I guess the first topic we're talking about is, the Union grinding out the win despite not creating a ton of chances last night. And if you guys have listened to the podcast, the last couple of episodes, the last couple of weeks, this is something myself and Jose Nunez have talked a lot about the last couple of weeks, where the Union aren't seeming to create a ton of chances. But it doesn't matter because they're still finding ways to win. Didn't create a lot of chances against Orlando City, got a 0-0 draw. Didn't create a lot against Atlanta. Didn't create a lot against DC. Didn't create a lot against New York City. I know they lost that game, and that's probably why they lost that game, with not creating a ton of chances. I don't think they created a lot of chances last night against Montreal. But this is what good teams do. Dare I say the Philadelphia Union are a good team. 11 games through the season, I think they have a point to be made. And they're going to have a good test, we know, against Columbus. We talked about that on last week's show. The Union took care of business against Orlando City earlier in the season, who's supposed to be one of the best teams. They took care of business against Cincinnati in the second game of the season. And yeah, Cincinnati had CCC to focus on and everything, but this is really going to be a strong test for the Union with Columbus coming to town next week. But yeah, 9 points against teams that you should have got results against. That's going to help you climb up the table. And again, I don't want to rehash what we talked about last week, but we're starting to see a trend with this team, right? The last couple of weeks, not creating a ton of chances, but they're winning against teams that they should have beat last season. And that's the difference between this year and last year. A lot of these games that the Union have won, that they grinded out, they squeaked out results, wasn't really the case last year. And I get it, right? Andre Blake missed 51% of the Union's games in all competitions. Having Andre Blake helps a lot. Makes a big save in the 4th minute in this game after Indy Vassilev gives the Union an early 1-0 lead in the 2nd minute. But it's night and day different, it seems like, this team compared to last. And I know they brought in a ton of new players this year, got rid of a lot of players too that have been with the team for a while. But this is what you want to do. You want to go out on the road. You want to grind out results. If you get a point, that's great. If you win, that's even better. 3 wins this season for the Union on the road. And they've been a really good road team the last 4 or 5 seasons under Jim Curtin. This team just knows how to grind out results on the road. And then you combine that with your home results, 4 wins at Subaru Park, which was hard to come by last season. You're going to find yourself in contention in the top 4. And that's, I think, where fans want to see this Union team in the top 4, getting as many home playoff games as possible. Yes, the Union are good on the road, but they play better at Subaru Park. And this team just continues to find ways to grind out results. And that's going to take this team just so far. Kyle says, Todd, talk about Ty Baribo touches in the box. We will absolutely get to that, Kyle. Cole says, Gazdag is nursing an injury, so that will be something to watch. He was a late scratch yesterday. Wow, wouldn't that be something, right? If Daniel Gazdag does not get to face the Union in his return match to Subaru Park, that would be crazy. Chris says personnel seems to fit the system. And that's exactly it. The Union go out and get personnel that fit this high press system. You get Indiana Vassilev, who, okay, hasn't created a ton of chances, gets his first goal for the Union last night and continues not to create chances. But you know what he does? He presses. He presses a lot. And that's exactly what Bradley Cornell values in the system. Jovan Lukic, he's a ball winner. He's a creator. And yeah, you might not be getting as many chances created from your 2 number 10s, but Jovan Lukic picks up the assist last night to Mikael Uhre, continues to be a thorn in team sides with his distribution as a number 6. We're seeing Daniel John Jock actually come into his own too, getting more for it. And we saw him add the goals. We saw him get the assist last night to to Indiana Vassilev. Both 6s getting the assist last night for the Union. And yeah, that's important. Just watching different players on this team contribute. And to Kyle's point, he said, talk about Ty Ribero's touches in the box, and that's a big part of it, right? I saw some people last night on social media upset with the way that Ty Ribero played, but you know, it's not his fault, in my opinion, when he's not getting a ton of chances created. Only 32 touches for Baribo, only one touch inside the 18-yard box. There's just not a lot of link up play between him and his teammates and a lot of service inside the 18-yard box where he thrives. We saw that connection earlier on in the season between Ty and Kai, and it's kind of dried up here the last couple of weeks. And we'll see if they can rediscover that connection. It seems like no matter what striker has started the last couple of weeks, they can't score. But if you come off the bench, you suddenly get a goal. And we'll talk about that here in a bit. But yeah, Ty Baribo had a quiet game, but I don't know if I can really fault that one tie just because the service really wasn't there for him last night. You had zero chances, like I said, created by Indiana Vasilev. And I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter when your 2-6s are the ones that are creating the chances. At least the Union are getting chances created. I think Kai Wagner had a pretty quiet game as well. But you're seeing different players step up in different moments. And that's what good teams do. When somebody's lacking, somebody steps up and picks up the slack. And so I'll be curious to see if that continues to happen the rest of the way. 11 games in, the answer seems to be yes. But once you start to face those better teams, a Columbus Crew, Cincinnati, Inter Miami, will the Unions continue to struggle to create chances against the better teams, but will they have other players step up? Mikael Uhre stepped up big last night, scoring that game-winning goal. Only one chance created by Quinn Sullivan last night. And I don't know about you. I'll keep throwing this to you guys tonight. I know I threw the question to Jose Nunez last week. Is he concerned about the lack of chances created by the Union? What do you guys think? Whether you guys are listening to this live on YouTube, youtube.com/freekickpod, or you guys are listening back to this on the podcast feed, leave a comment on Spotify and I'll go ahead and make sure to comment on that. Or you guys can go ahead and leave a comment back on Twitter or YouTube, and I'll be sure to see that comment if you guys aren't listening live. But yeah, it is a little bit concerning, in my opinion, that your number 10s, who are supposed to be your creative players, aren't really creating chances. The Union, fortunate, maybe a little bit lucky that other players are stepping up. Again, how long can that last? Will it happen against the better teams? We shall see. But look, players are stepping up big. And again, that's what you want. You want players stepping up against teams you're supposed to beat. Because I think a lot of this fan base would have been disappointed if the Union would have lost to Montreal. I think Montreal had a big case to be made last night that they deserved at least a point with the lack of chances that the Union created. How many chances did we see, or shots did we see the Union take outside the 18-yard box last night? It was at least 3-4 of them, right? One of the goals came from outside the 18 with Indiana Vasilev. I'm fully aware of that. A beautiful hit by Indy, but it just seemed like last night, majority of the Union's shots came outside of the 18. Montreal made it very difficult for the Union to get the ball out wide to Kai Wagner to cross it in, get it out wide to Frankie Westfield to cross it in. The Union were forced to play through the middle, which they did well with. Dylan John Jock with a Jovan Lukic. But again, that's not where the Union are at their best. They're at their best when they're in those wide channels, crossing the ball inside the 18-yard box. We talked about it last week. That's the kind of service that you want to get into, Bruno Damiani. I know he came off the bench against Montreal last night. But look, the Union found a way to grind out a result despite not creating many chances. Chris says, but last night after a hot opening day, they seemed to fade early and it lasted for the rest of the game. Yeah, absolutely. The Union did struggle throughout the rest of the game. They got a gift, right? And we'll talk about Siwa getting a hand on that Mikael Uhre shot, and the shot was powerful enough that it still found the way in the back of the net. But the Union very, very fortunate to get all 3 points. But I think it was Joe Tanzi who said it on Twitter after the game. You know, in a couple months, when we look back at this result, not many people are going to remember how this game played out. They're just going to see, 3 points, a win in Montreal, a place, by the way, that the Union haven't won at Stade Saputo Stadium since 2015. The Union only have 2 wins ever in that stadium. And the last one came in 2015. Who scored the game-winning goal? Sebastian Letou. 1-0 Philadelphia Union win. So Yeah, I mean, the Union broke a long, long, long curse in that stadium. I know some of the times the Union have played in Montreal, they played inside the Olympic Stadium. But yeah, when the matches are played outside in Stade Saputo, the Union struggle, and the Union do get a result, a massive result. We'll hear Bradley Cornell's thoughts on that in a little bit. Uh, Domesticated Hoagie now. I love that you changed your name. Says, okay, this season has been way more fun than I expected. And I think a lot of fans feel the same way. If you would have told fans that the Union 11 games in would be 2 points off of first place, chasing the Columbus Crew, 7 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, I think a lot of fans would say, nah, you're lying. But yeah, 11 games in, who wouldn't take this? Cole says, anyone else feel like Kai has not been himself since the injury? Yeah, a little bit. And I don't know if you guys caught this, but it looked like Kai Wagner was limping on the broadcast too last night. I believe he took a challenge. I forget who put in the challenge, but Kai did seem to be struggling a little bit. Chris says the chances are manufactured by the double sixes. And yeah, absolutely spot on. And who would have thought that two defensive minded players would turn into two attacking players? Danley has 2 goals, 1 assist in his last 3 appearances. Lukic has, and I didn't write this number down, has 2 goals. I know that, but was that his first assist of the season? Somebody in the comments let me know. Domesticated Hoagie says soon to be in the first place in the Eastern Conference. The Union are. Valerie says yes, the 2 goals were excellent goals, but the Union got lucky that several good shots of Montreal didn't go in. Thanks to Andre's knees for one. Yeah, absolutely. Evan says between the second minute and 84th minute, kind of a snooze fest. Yeah, it really was. Well, I guess if you're a Union fan, which all you guys listening to this are definitely Union fans, it was a snooze fest and not much to write when I go back and look at my match report when I was like, okay, this is what happened in this minute because, yeah, not a lot of actions for the Union, but there was a lot of actions for Montreal, and that's why I feel like Montreal was a little bit hard done not to get at least a point in this game. But this is something that caught me by surprise. I don't know if this caught you guys by surprise, but the MLS PR staff put out that this is the best start in the Philadelphia Union's club history after 11 games. 7-3-1 record, 22 points. Like I had mentioned several times now, second place in the Eastern Conference, trail Columbus Crew by 2 points. 21 goals scored, most in the Eastern Conference, tied for the third most in MLS. 10 goals conceded, tied for the second fewest in MLS, tied for the third fewest in MLS. Tied for the second fewest in the Eastern Conference, tied for the third fewest in MLS. And the Union have 10 different goal scorers now in the season, Indiana Vasilev becoming the latest one. And again, I don't like repeating myself so many times, but we're seeing a trend this season, right? Players stepping up when it matters, when other players are lacking. And we'll see if that happens against the better teams. But so I can go ahead and get a drink here and save myself from all the talking I've done 20 minutes into the podcast. This is what Bradley Cornell had to say last night on just how big that win was in Montreal.
This is massive. And if you can just see the guys, the faces, how relieved they are because they know they put in a big shift tonight and to find the quality in the key moments to put them under. And I thought the way we managed when we scored the goal, I thought the next 10 minutes, 12 minutes that we managed the game, it was fun to watch. You know, everyone we brought in had a specific job to do and they did that excellently. So yeah, a real team effort tonight from the staff preparing for the game. I think the players executing. I think the subs coming in and making an impact. I thought everybody had a role to play and we all did that.
All right. So the comment that I didn't get to first was I still yet to buy 1,000% in. I'm worried how this will hold up in the dog days of summer, especially as clubs around us spend money in the summer. And yeah, that's something I've talked about also on the podcast the last couple of weeks is, is this style of play under Cornell pressing, going to last? We see pressing teams. Liverpool comes to mind, just how wore out some of those players got. A Sadio Mane, a Roberto Firmino, a Adam Lallana, a James Milner, Jordan Henderson. Guys that were just taxed to press 24/7 every single minute, every single game. And eventually their legs got tired, they gave out. And, will that be the case with the Union where, okay, they're not pressing all the time, but they are pressing more than they had under Jim Curtin the last 2 years, I would say. And will that be the case under Bradley Cornell? Can they sustain that? Yeah, I'm still iffy on that. But look, again, winning the games that you're supposed to win, Union do have themselves in a really good position. The whole money aspect, uh, I find it hard to believe that the Union won't be active in the summer transfer window. I do worry though with a player like Quinn Sullivan at Danley John Jock playing so well. I'd imagine offers will come in. Will the Union be able to say no to some of those offers? Because look, let's face it, Danley John Jock is a player that is good enough to play in Europe. Came from FC Metz because they got relegated. Union paid $1.5 million for him, and seems like a steal. Honestly, seems like a steal for Danley. And if he continues to play as well as he has, I can see him going right back to Europe, and that would be a huge loss for the Union. We talked about it a few weeks ago. The rumors and the interest from teams in Europe in Quinn Sullivan. I think if Quinn continues to play as well as he's played this season, should make the Gold Cup squad. And if he plays well with the Gold squad or Gold Cup team, then yeah, there could be a real possibility of Quinn Sullivan playing in Europe. But you guys heard Bradley Cornell say there that this is a massive win for this team. And to the comment that I just read, okay, yeah, let's say the Union do drop some points in the summertime. You know, they have this game against Montreal where they probably shouldn't have won, but at the end of the day, they pick up 3 points. They picked up 3 points against a terrible Atlanta United team, which on paper they shouldn't be with the amount of talent they have. They picked up points against a DC United team that I don't think's as bad as the record says they are. And you continue to pick up these points. And you can afford to lose a game or two here in the summertime. But yeah, I do expect the Union to be active in the summer. And uh, I think the longer this goes on with Union lack of creating chances, I do think that we'll see some players brought in during the summertime. Now let's just hope that they don't lose some of these players. John says, who spent big money in MLS and who's doing great? Exactly. Atlanta United spent huge money, and they're one of the worst teams in MLS this season. Chris says, agree with Evan. Also, after the goal, it was mostly overhead balls that were lost and led to change of position. And yeah, I mean, that's something that Bradley Cornell talked about. I forget what game it was. It was one of the most recent home games where he said, I think it was Atlanta, where they planned on giving them possession on the ball and then quickly turning them over in their half. And I think that's going to continue with this team, where we see them wanting to quickly counter transition. You go from offense to defense quickly and turn teams over in their half. And so it may not be the most exciting brand of soccer, but it's working for the team 11 games into the season. Chris says, even when they're not pressing, it's still an up-tempo game and it's not that hard. And it's that hard to sustain, like you said, Todd. Yeah, absolutely. And Chris also says, Danley has made me forget about Jose Martinez, Brujo, much faster than expected. And yeah, I mean, that's just it, right? Where it seems like Ernst Tanner has hit on a lot of these moves. Jovan Lukic, and I know there's some people on social media that say, well, it's still too early for me to sing the praises of some of these players. Jovan Lukic looks like a hit. Dylan John Jock looks like a hit. Yeah, I know who was brought in during August of last year. Jan Glavinovic looked to be a hit before he got injured. Makanya finally playing. Looks to be a solid center back. Yes, he's still prone to mistakes, but I think he had a pretty good game last night against Montreal. Bruno Damiani, he's shown flashes of what he can be. I think he will turn out to be a really good player. Indiana Vasilev absolutely fits this system. Not going to give you a ton of goals, not going to give you a ton of assists, but pressing is exactly why he was brought in. And so I would consider a player like Frankie Westfield too, right? Where if you watch Union 2, you might say, yeah, you knew that Frankie Westfield was going to be as good as advertised. But my argument would be MLS Next Pro compared to MLS is a night and day difference. And because of Frankie Westfield playing as well as he has, it gives you the opportunity to put Nathan Harriel on the bench, rest him. And it was so crazy too, seeing last night Nathan come in and playing as a number 10 for the second time this season. What did you guys make of that performance? I mean, that's not what I was expecting. And I was texting a couple friends saying that with the lack of chances created by the Union, I kind of felt last night was a game for Kevin Sullivan to come in. I don't think Montreal was overly physical, which suits Kevin's game. you're looking for a player that can beat somebody on the 1v1 dribble. You're looking for the player that can, have that change of pace. And I thought last night would have been a good opportunity for Kevin Sullivan. But Bradley Cornell goes to Nathan Harriel at a number 10 and doesn't bring in Kevin Sullivan, who is a natural number 10. Does that tell you where Bradley Cornell sees Kevin Sullivan on the depth chart? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm sure part of it was, just matchups and everything. I'm sure that's what Cornell would say. Why Nathan Harriel came in as a 10 for that aggressiveness in the offensive half of the field. But again, he's not a number 10, and he's done the job the last 2 games that he's played it. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that Nathan Harriel came in instead of a Kevin Sullivan, who I thought would have done good. Valerie says, I'd say it took 2 players, Danley and Yervon, to make me forget about Jose. Evan says, Zemla should not be second, third string goalie and taking up an international roster spot. I think that hurts us. Jose Nunez and I have talked about that so many times on this show. I don't want to rehash that. I agree with you, Evan, and hopefully the Union are able to get Oliver a green card in the summertime or somehow move on from him. But yeah, when he's making over $100,000, I'm not sure many teams are going to want to pay that for a third choice goalkeeper, a goalkeeper that should probably be paying in the USL. Chris says, good point, Valerie. I like both of those guys a lot. John says, in terms of Kevin Sullivan, it tells me he looks at him as a 15-year-old still. And I mean, you're not wrong. And that I say it all the time to people that ask me about Kevin is, oh, how's Kevin doing? He's 15. But I thought that last night would have been a good opportunity to get Kevin some minutes. And he played meaningful minutes last week, right? Against DC United. We saw Kevin come off the bench. But yeah, at the end of the day, the Union grind out a result, a much needed result. You get 9 points against teams that you should have beat. And at the end of the day, it's a huge result, just like Bradley Cornell had said. One thing I did want to touch on, you brought it up, Valerie, is that save by Andre Blake in the 4th minute. Former Philadelphia Union player Fabian Herbers plays a beautiful through ball into Prince Awasu. And it's a big save there by Andre Blake. I think Makanya got caught ball watching a little bit, expected Andre Blake to just smother that ball. He spills it. And Veroni could have got that loose ball. But thank goodness Andre Blake was quick enough to jump back on the loose ball and make sure that nobody could tap that into the back of the net. But then you have the moment in the 68th minute, right, where Kai Wagner clears Tom Pierce's cross off of Andre Blake's knee. You had mentioned that, Valerie. In the 30th minute, Tom Pierce crosses the ball. It deflects off of Frankie Westfield, deflects off of Andre Blake's back leg, and somehow they don't score off of that. Montreal then have a penalty shout in the 77th minute where they thought that Dante Sealy had been fouled by Ivan Lukic. The initial call on the field was no penalty. They gave to the VAR monitor to see, okay, look, is there actually something in this? And when it took 2-3 minutes, I'm like, okay, it's obviously not clear and obvious. You're not going to overturn this. And that's exactly what the referee said. Didn't overturn the call, decided to stay with the initial call on the field, no penalty. And Montreal felt like they were a little bit hard done. But yeah, you have a couple deflections in this game where maybe if it takes a little bit different of a touch, a little bit different of a bounce, it winds up going in the back of the net. So I do think the Union were a little bit fortunate on the night to come away with the 3 points. And that brings me up to point number 2 that I want to talk about is Mikael Uhre's form against Montreal. 5 goals and 6 appearances. Coming into the game, he had 4 goals and 5 appearances. And Mikael does get a little bit lucky last night. You had Sirwa get a hand to that. He got a hand to the shot by Mikael Uhre. It's a great through ball by Ivan Lukic. But Mikael got a little bit lucky, and I think we can admit that if he didn't put as much power on it that he did, then maybe Sirwa comes up with that save. It's a good run by Mikael Uhre. It's a good through ball. It's a good win back by Jovan Lukic, turning Montreal over in their half of the field. We talked about that. That's how the Union want to play. And look, that counter transition going from defense to offense, a lot of Union goals are going to continue to be scored that way. But the Union were a little bit fortunate with Mikael Uhre scoring that goal. But at the same time, it just seems like Mikael has the number of Montreal. And this is a stat that the MLS PA put out last night. I'll pull it up here on the screen. Hopefully, you guys can see it. It says by scoring the game winning goal tonight, Mikael Uhre tied Julian Kranza for the fifth most goals in Philadelphia Union history in MLS play with 34. And Mikael Uhre is a player, right, that gets a lot of hate by this fan base where they want him to score more goals than what he's given. And I agree, you're paying a guy $2 million, probably should have a few more goals. But the last 3 years, Mikael scored 10 plus goals in all competitions. And that's exactly what you want from a striker is to score goals. Is Mikael scoring at the numbers you want him to score? No. But was Julian Kranza scoring at the rate that you would expect top goal scorers to score at? No. Goals come in bunches with these guys. And it took Mikael 10 weeks to score a second goal of the season. And it's a big goal, the game winning goal. And we'll talk about it here in a little bit with 3 straight weeks of the Union getting goals from strikers off the bench, where, okay, in those previous games, it didn't really matter. It was just a consolation goal to really kill off the game. But Mikael Uhre scored a game winning goal. That's a big moment for Mikael. Picked up an assist last week, it was, to Bruno Damiani against Atlanta. Now he gets his goal, comes off the bench and scores his goal. And we talked about the Union not creating a lot of chances for Ty Baribo. Didn't really create a lot of chances for Chris Donovan in this game. Didn't create a ton of chances for Bruno Damiani as well. But Mikael gets one chance and he buries it. And that's what you want to see from your strikers. And I know Mikael doesn't always do that, hasn't always done that in his appearances. He's been a striker that gets a ton of chances the last couple of years. He's putting a lot of those shots on target, but they're not finding the back of the net. Last night, he finds the back of the net, and that's a really, really big moment for Mikael. And let's see. Hopefully, that does kickstart what should be a busy May for the Union. And the Union are going to need all hands on deck, and hopefully, Mikael Uhre can continue to provide goals for the Union. Chris says a goal is a goal, and that was a big one. Absolutely. Bruce says, after not giving up a goal in the last 2 games, why change the defense? I think Herriel was doing well. And I think it was probably a little bit more of just rest. And yeah, it is a fair point that the Union had kept 2 clean sheets against Atlanta United and DC United. But at the same time, you got a game against Indy 11 on Wednesday, and then you have a game on Saturday. It's going to be a busy May. 8 games guaranteed, a potential 9 games if the Union beat Indy 11 on Wednesday. And so you're going to need to be wary of players' minutes. Let's not forget, right, that Nathan Herriel was dealing with an injury early in the season, missed a few games. And so he's probably still building his way back into full fitness. And I think, Makanya played well last night. Yes, the Union gave up a goal to a Montreal team who had yet to score a goal at home this season. It's a little bit disappointing, but I think it was well-deserved with how well that Montreal played. And I'm not going to lie, I haven't watched a ton of Montreal games this season. But yeah, if you continue to see them play like they did against the Union last night, I'm sure they're going to get a couple wins this season because they gave the Union a challenge. John said he had this tendency to shoot right at the goalie. When he gets hot, they go left or right of the goal. Absolutely. And last night was kind of straight at the goalie too, right? And Sierwa deflects it and it goes into the corner. And let's just hope, right, that Mikael can continue this hot form and help the Union in a busy May. Valerie asks, what is the projection for Ian's return? Jan's return. I don't know. I mean, he posted last week that he was back at training. I would imagine training on the side. So that's got to be promising. Maybe the summertime, but again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to guess how long a meniscus injury is going to take. Bradley Cornell did say that he is ahead of schedule. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Union in the summertime, even if Jan is healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and get another center back. I think they probably need it two center backs to start the season, two more center backs to start the season. Yes, I know they have Neil Pierre, but no, is he MLS ready yet? I don't know. You don't know until you play him, but I think I would have felt more comfortable if the Union would have went out and got two center backs instead of one this summer. But uh, yeah, I don't really want to put a projection or prediction on when I think Jan will be back. And Bradley's been pretty tight-lipped and hasn't given an exact date. And again, you just never know with meniscus injuries, and players heal differently at different times compared to other players that deal with similar injuries. So yeah, I'm not really going to predict or try to guess when that's happened or how long that's going to take. But yeah, again, getting back to Mikael Uhre, tied Julian Kranza last night for fifth most goals in Union history with 34. He's 2 goals off tying CJ Sapong for second for the third most goals in Union history at 36. And again, Mikael's a player that gets a lot of hate, gets bashed on constantly by this fan base. Maybe not as much as Chris Donovan, but yeah, Mikael's been, it seems like, public enemy number one for the last couple of years. And yeah, when you're paying $2 million again, you expect a little bit more goals and assists. And that's what you pay your goalie, your strikers to do, is score goals. But yeah, it's a big moment last night for Mikael to get his 5th goal in 6 appearances against Montreal. And so I had asked Bradley Cornell last night, number one, did that go into your considerations to start Mikael Uhre against Montreal, just knowing that he has the number? And 2, why does Bradley Cornell think certain players perform better against certain teams? And this is what Bradley Cornell had to say on that question last night.
Yeah, I don't know. You're going to have to ask Mika that. I didn't know about his record before the game. I'm only focused on what's happening now in the present moment, and how we're preparing for games and how we're preparing for, each minute of every game. So I'm happy with everyone who came in tonight and made an impact. Everyone did a job. Nate came in at a 10. I mean, Sealy and whoever they brought in, Opoku, Caden Clark, they all gave us a bit of a problem, and we had to require big energy from the whole squad tonight. And the best moment for me is when I look on the bench and the guys who didn't get a game are clapping and celebrating with the whole team. So I'm just happy for Mika. He gets his goal now. He can carry on his streak against Montreal, but I think he'll put that to the team's hard work.
So a couple of things there that I want to address. Number one, Bradley Cornell's a former player. And so, yes, I know he was a defender, but he should have some kind of reasoning why certain players perform better against certain teams. And I asked Jim Curtin this question a couple years ago because Sergio Santos is a player that has had Toronto's number. And I had asked Jim Curtin, why is that? And I forget the answer why Jim said he believes Sergio Santos plays so well against Toronto. And I think, if I'm remembering, this was a few years ago. I think he said something along the lines of, Sergio having the pace to get in behind and Toronto not having the quickest center backs. And so he's used his pace to the effect. And yeah, I'm sure that's probably part of it with Mikael Uhre too, right? Where Montreal don't have the quickest center backs, haven't had the quickest center backs the last couple of years. And Mikael offers you something different compared to the other strikers, where I would say Ty Baribo and Bruno Damiani are more suited with hold-up play compared to Mikael, who's not really suited to that, where he's going to get in behind. And so I think that's why Mikael works so well with both strikers, where they're pretty good players that can hold up the ball well. They're good inside the 18-yard box, but Mikael offers you something a little bit differently, and he opens up that space with the runs. And so I'm a little bit surprised that Bradley Cornell didn't answer that question, being a former player. But then the second thing that I don't believe at all is there is no way in hell that Bradley Cornell did not know Mikael Uhre's numbers coming into the game against Montreal, when the Philadelphia Union absolutely love analytics. They love stats. I mean, they've got a fantastic analytics department. Brought in Sean Rooney, former analyst with St. Louis, and I forget the other team who was with, maybe Montreal. I forget who the other team was. But the Union, they are big on analytics, and there is no way that Bradley Cornell did not know that Mikael Uhre has good numbers against Montreal. Maybe part of his thinking was, okay, we bring Mikael Uhre off the bench if we need a goal, and because he knows how to score against Montreal, he'll get us another goal. Maybe that was part of it. I don't know. But for him to say, yeah, I didn't know his record, I didn't know his numbers against Montreal, I don't believe that at all. But okay, Bradley, fair play. But yeah, he does bring up a good point too, right? Where you see Mikael bringing the energy off the bench, scoring the game-winning goal. And you see when the cameras pan to all the players warming up, Alejandro Badori, Kevin Sullivan, Olivier Bizo, Indiana Vasilev had been off at that moment. And they're all celebrating with Mikael Uhre. Scores that game-winning goal in the 84th minute. And this is a team that, look, this locker room could have been completely broken when you trade Daniel Gazdag during the season to a rival in Columbus Crew. But they continue to just grind out results, continue to win. And that's going to take this team far. And just seeing that they're balling in as one unit, one team. And to Chris's point earlier in the episode, where they brought in a lot of players that fit the system, maybe these results shouldn't be that surprising. Maybe this togetherness shouldn't be that surprising when this team seems to understand how Bradley Cornell wants to play, and they continue to execute how Bradley Cornell wants to play. And the players that are executing are the strikers coming off the bench. You had Ty Baribo 2 weeks ago against Atlanta United, scores a goal. Bruno Damiani comes off the bench last week against DC United, scores a goal. And now you have Mikael Uhre coming off the bench against Montreal, and he scores a goal. 3 straight weeks with a striker coming off the bench. And yes, you want your strikers scoring goals starting this game, the strikers that start. But at the same time, saying that we have players that are able to come off the bench and give us goals, which hasn't been the case in the past for the Union. I can remember Corey Burke pretty much being the only striker the last few years coming off the bench. Sergio Santos had his moments too coming off the bench, but it was really only Corey Burke being the lone striker coming off the bench, knowing that he will potentially give you a goal, be a threat to give you a goal off the bench. And now Bradley Cornell said it midweek that we can, press and fans alike, can expect rotation to continue with the strikers. And so if you're a betting person, should you put a bet on whatever striker is going to be on the bench and bet them to score? Maybe. maybe that's not a bad shout. But yeah, it is interesting to see that you have those guys, okay, when they do get called on to start, they don't score. And yes, the goals that Ty Baribo and Damiani scored against Atlanta and DC United weren't the much needed goals like it was last night for Mikael Uhre. But it does say something to the confidence of these strikers to have those tough conversations with Bradley Cornell when he says, hey, look, unfortunately, we're not going to pick you to start this week, but you are going to come off the bench. And that makes this trust so much better between players and manager when the players coming off the bench and scoring goals. And then, I'm sure the conversations are, well, I came off the bench, I scored, now I should be starting. But again, credit to Bradley Cornell. This is something that Jim Curtin didn't do a lot of during his time as Philadelphia Union manager, using his bench. And it seems like every single game, we see Bradley Cornell going with 5 subs. And Bradley Cornell talks about how the striker department's important. You can expect 2 changes every single game up top. And a lot of fans get on Chris Donovan, who starts last night. But let's not forget, he was highly involved in the first goal that the Union scored, with a build-up with Frankie Westfield, Danley John Jock, Quinn Sullivan, Chris Donovan, the 1-2 passing. Chris Donovan drops deep, pulls the center back out of position, and gives the return pass back to Danley John Jock to run into that space. There was a moment in the first half where Chris Donovan tracks all the way back defensively, wins the ball back for the Union. And Bradley Cornell's talked about that's what impresses him with Chris Donovan is his work rate. He said that multiple times with Mikael Uhre, his work rate. He said it earlier in the season about Ty Baribo, his work rate. And so, yeah, Chris Donovan may not be MLS quality, but he did his job, right? He tired out that back line. He made it physical on that back line in Montreal last night. And it allows a Mikael Uhre a Bruno Damiani to come into this game and go at tired legs of CF Montreal. And so, yes, again, strikers should score goals. You want your strikers scoring goals. You definitely want to see strikers that start scoring goals. But at the end of the day, 3 straight weeks now, and you have strikers scoring goals. And this is what Bradley Cornell had to say on that.
Just shows what they are investing in training. It just shows that we've committed to everybody. It just shows that, we have a direction, and the direction is, a collective effort and being a real team. And I'm happy with the players, the way they've embraced that. It's a good challenge. It's a big challenge to tell somebody they're not starting on the night and to trust you. And when players walk off the field and say thank you, we're trying to set them up for the best ways possible to gain success. And right now, we're gaining a lot of traction, a lot of momentum, and we just have to reset every Monday and go again.
Yeah, again, I mean, I know I kind of repeated what Bradley Cornell said, but it is a lot of trust between the manager and player where you have those difficult conversations saying, hey, look, you're not going to start this week, but you come off the bench and you score. And that's going to feel so good for the player that, look, you're still going to get your moments. It's not like you're not going to play any. And Bradley Cornell's done such a good job using 5 substitutes pretty much every single game. And again, a little bit confused why Nathan Harriel was chosen over a Kevin Sullivan, over a Jeremy Raffanello. I know Raffanello comes in really late in this game, I think the 88th minute. But look, I mean, can you really complain about Bradley Cornell subs? Because time and time again, the last few weeks, his subs seem to be working off the bench. And the longer that continues, I think the less and less questions are going to be asked. Is this the right man for the job? And Chris says right here, Bradley fits Tanner's system better than Jim. I'm enjoying seeing more subs. And I think a lot of fans feel the same way. That's a lot of comments I would get. And I know I wasn't doing the show live that much last season, but a lot of people would comment back on the show saying, oh, we want to see more subs. Jim Curtin never uses his subs. Well, you can never say that Bradley Cornell doesn't use his substitutes. And we'll see. We'll see going forward. There was a question here by John earlier asking who starts Wednesday at center back. It's a good question. I would love to see Neil Pierre start against Indy 11. I wouldn't mind giving Jakob Glesnes a rest. I think Makanya and Neil Pierre would be an interesting 1-2 punch because of their chemistry they had last season with Union 2. I wouldn't mind seeing that center back pairing. I do believe the Union are going to go ahead and go for the U.S. Open Cup. Yeah, we'll see some rotation, I'm sure. Andrew Rick, does he starting goal over Andre Blake? Does Oliver Zemlis starting goal? I don't think so. Does Andre Blake continue to be in net? We shall see. I think Andrew Rick played fantastically last night for Union 2, made 4 saves in the penalty shootout. He's great distribution-wise. It's a great shot, good shot stopper. And yeah, I mean, center back, I wouldn't mind seeing Makanya and Neil Pierre. I wouldn't mind seeing Andrew Rick. But I would also like to see the Union go for the U.S. Open Cup. And again, Bradley Cornell said midweek that the Union will. Only 5 games, and they could be in a final playing for a trophy. And when you're that close to lifting silverware, why not go for the U.S. Open Cup? Philly River says, will Philly get Vardy? I hope not. I think that has Wrexham Dragons written all over it. Though I do see Columbus Crew fans saying that they want Jamie Vardy, but yeah, that's definitely not what the Union need. But I don't think there's anything that I really missed on this game. It's a game that, again, Montreal is a little bit hard done not getting a point in this game. Union grind out a really, really good, difficult result at a stadium where they've struggled the last few years. Only their second win ever, first since 2015. And yeah, I mean, good vibes going in against Indy 11. Hopefully that continues into Saturday against Columbus 2, against Columbus Crew between first and second place. But I had mentioned it at the beginning of the show, and that is Blunder of the Week is back. We do have a good Blunder of the Week contender. And I don't know how many of you guys saw this on social media, but Blunder of the Week is going to go to an MLS team that has richer owners than the Union, owns LA Rams, the Denver Nuggets, the Colorado Avalanche, Arsenal, a Premier League club, Arsenal. And yes, they own the Rapids too, and I don't think they realize they own the Rapids. But yesterday morning, Chris Armas, the head coach for Colorado Rapids, he was at the National Hall of Fame getting inducted into the National Soccer Hall of Fame in Frisco. And Colorado Rapids had a game in DC later that night. And so instead of flying their head coach from Frisco to DC, they decide not to fly their head coach, and he has to coach this game remotely. And so my blunder of the week is going to go to Colorado Rapids for not flying head coach Chris Armas to DC for the DC United vs. Colorado Rapids game last night.
Yeah, not good.
And so I'll go ahead and read the statement that Colorado put out on social media last night before this match. It reads, head coach Chris Armas is watching tonight's match remotely after technical issues with his flight following his introduction this morning into the National Soccer Hall of Fame, preventing his arrival to Audi Field. He remains actively involved and in close communication with his staff. First assistant coach Chris Little will assume head coaching duties on the sidelines tonight. Rapids, by the way, lost to DC United by a score of 2-1. Again, I mean, I set it up perfectly. This is a team. This is an ownership that owns the Denver Nuggets, the Avalanche, the LA Rams, and Arsenal. Two juggernauts of teams. The LA Rams and Arsenal, a Premier League powerhouse, a team that's in the semifinals of the Champions League. And you don't pay for a charter flight for your head coach. Like I said, does ownership even know that they own LA Galaxy, the Colorado Rapids? Do they know? And so it sounds like Chris Armas tried to board a flight. Doesn't sound like it was a charter flight. Had technical issues. And so now has to be remote and watch this game remote, just like all of us that didn't go to Montreal, watching on Apple TV. I mean, what are we doing? Seriously, what are we doing? Colorado Rapids ownership. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. John says, at least we own a helicopter if we ever needed it. LOL. I mean, that's the thing too, right? That the Cronkies own a private plane and they couldn't get it to Frisco to fly to DC to get Chris Armas to the game last night. He was inducted in the morning. And so it's not like it really interfered with the game. So why not have a private plane in Frisco and fly it to DC? Insanity. Insanity for an ownership that's as rich as Stan Kroenke. When you own multiple teams, you don't want to fly one of your head coaches to a game? It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. Valerie says, that's unbelievable. Yeah, not good for sure. Philly River says, wow. Domesticated Hoagie says, yeah, not good. Valerie, technical issues. Good blunder choice. Kyle off hook. Philly says, what was Kyle on the hook for? I don't even know, Philly Rivers. But yeah, I mean, come on now. What are we doing, Colorado Rapids? Chris did say before blunder of the week, Lukic reminds me of Kai, hyper-competitive, tough, and plays his position well. Yeah, and I think if Jovan's here long enough, I think he would make a really good captain for the Union. But almost an hour into the podcast, and I honestly wasn't expecting us to go this long in a game that you guys have talked about. It wasn't the most exciting from the second minute to the 84th minute. But look, we made it through the episode. You guys made it through, and I appreciate all you guys watching this live every single episode on YouTube, youtube.com. But if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Free Kick. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get the podcast. Again, like I said, live every single podcast on YouTube, youtube.com. Now, after you guys get done listening to this or watching this, make sure you check out the latest goals breakdown video that is up now on YouTube. Not a lot to break down from that game. I believe the video was about 14 minutes, 30 seconds long, but that video is live. So make sure you guys go ahead and check that out and subscribe to the YouTube page. 327 subscribers we have now. I hope to, by the end of the season, get to 500. I do think it's possible. And a lot of you great people that comment are doing a good job spreading the word. So let's try to get the page to 500. No, I don't think I get anything special, but the more people that know about the podcast, the better. And if you guys want to check out my writing or the podcast or the goals breakdown video all in one place, you can check out thefreekick.substack.com. As Valerie says right here, she says, hope to see everyone at the Sub on Wednesday. And Evan says he got inducted into the Hall of Fame and that's how they treat him. Yeah, insane. And they had a really good video too a couple months ago when they were announcing to Chris that he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so finally the day comes and you don't fly him to DC for the game. Insane. Domesticated Hoagie says Val do a vlog for the game on Wednesday. Chris says thanks, Todd. And Bruce says another great episode. Look, you guys make the show. Your comments were wonderful tonight. We'll be back either on Thursday or Friday reviewing the game on Wednesday against Indy 11. Fingers crossed the Philadelphia Union win that game, progress through the U.S. Open Cup, and I believe they would play the winner of the Pittsburgh Riverhounds or New York City in the following round. And the Union would host as well. So let's see what happens. Let's see how many people show up to the game Wednesday night at Subaru Park, 7:30 kickoff. But until then, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.